I wanted to talk about talismans today, and very specifically about magic squares, magic square talismans. This is the Key of Solomon. It's the Clavis, or Key to the Magic of Solomon. This is the Joseph Peterson edition. It's a beautiful facsimile. I've got a full review on my channel, which you can check out. But I was particularly interested today in magic squares. What's the point in a magic square? Well, first of all, a magic square is a mathematical game, you could actually say. It's a square with so obviously a square will have the same number of elements lengthwise and heightwise, and each row and each column adds up to the same number. So this is the Jupiter square because it's got four numbers horizontally and vertically, and 4 is the number of Chesed, which is the sphere of Jupiter, and each row adds up to 34, and each column adds up to 34. So it's magic because each part of it resonates with each other, so it's perfect, right, in that sense. And it is of Jupiter because the number of elements in each row is 4. Now, these magic squares have not always been associated specifically with planets. As early as 2nd century BCE, we already find these in India. We find them in China around, I think it's 6th century CE. And then around the 16th century, very early 16th century, we start seeing them in Europe. And here's that very, very famous picture of Albrecht Dürer's called Melancholia 2. And in the top right-hand corner, we see that Jupiter square. Now, it's not exactly the same one as the one that's shown in the Clavis. The bottom line is actually at the top, and the top line's at the bottom. The two middle lines are swapped as well, so it's kind of mirrored. And also the 15 and 14 and the 3 and the 2 are swapped as well. So if I bring you back over here, you'll be able to see that instead of 3 and 2, we have 2 and 3 here. But it doesn't matter, it still works. It's still a perfect square that is 4 by 4 and therefore a Jupiterian square. But it's Agrippa who actually goes into the details of how these squares are built and what you can do with these talismans in quite a lot of detail. This is the second book of Occult Philosophia of Agrippa. This is the beautiful black letterpress edition, which was released just a couple of weeks ago. Really, really beautiful edition. And yeah, if you have a look at this chapter 22, it's all about what you can actually do with the various squares of the various planets. And then there's a description of how to build on these magic squares. And yeah, the description is sparse, but you can infer how all of these sigils were eventually built. And I just wanted to talk about a video by Eloisa Sinclair, which is extraordinary, and I'll link it down below. It's very, very clear, and she talks about how these various sigils are built up. So, for example, the seal of Saturn. Let's have a look on here, which is a little bit larger here. The seal of Saturn is simply made up like this, going 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, and that is the seal of Saturn right there. And then over here, the intelligence of Saturn, which is Agiel, right? Agiel spelt with the Hebrew alphabet would be Aleph, Gimel, Yod, Aleph, Lamed. Now the Aleph, you attribute a number to each of these letters, right? From Aleph to Tau. And because there are only 9 numbers to go around in a Saturn square, then you start going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then you start at 1 again, etc., etc., all right, and so on. So you have a look. The A, or the Aleph, is number 1. So you start at 1. Then the Gimel down here is number 3. So you go from 1 to 3. Then we've got the Yod, right? The Yod is back to 1. So it's up and down, right? And then the Aleph is 1 again, but we're already at 1, right? So you just do a bump, right? So like a little number 3, right? So just a little bump. And then that Lamed is number 3 again. So we're back up to number 3. So we get something looking like this. I beg your pardon, wrong direction. Starting at 1, up to 3, down to 1, little bump, and then back up here. You can put little circles at the top and at the bottom to say this is the beginning, this is the end, and you have the sigil of Agiel, which is, here we go, the sigil that we have down here, the intelligence of Saturn. Also happens to be the logo of Black Letter Press. Then we have the same thing for Jupiter, except that the numbers here go all the way up to 16. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, but instead of going back to 1 here, you continue 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then you start back at 1 here, 1, 2, 3. So whatever you want to draw, whatever word you want to draw, whatever divine name you want to draw, etc., etc. On this square, you would use this different scale, right? And then you would just draw around it, and then you would have your sigil. Now, what's the idea? Well, why would you have a planetary square? If you've ever listened to the music of Gustav Holst, you'll probably be familiar with the planets, right? He made a whole suite of compositions called the planets, going from Mercury to Saturn. And with each one of these tunes, he's given the listener an impression of the energies of that planet. So you could say that that music is infused with the essence of whatever planet is playing, right? Well, these squares are really the mathematical equivalent of that. So if you can understand how music can have the qualities of a planet, then you can understand how a mathematical representation can also have the qualities of a planet. And therefore anything drawn on to the layout of that particular planet's magical square will have a slightly more appropriate energy to it. Then, of course, you can draw it at a particular time of the day, on a particular day, and at a particular time of the year to give it even more of that planet's qualities. And suddenly you have an object which is imbued with all of the energies and qualities of that planet, of that Kabbalistic sphere. So those are the general points today. I know that a film has recently come out called Tenet, and I was looking at magical squares with letters, right? So Tenet, of course, is the central word from this very well-known magical square, which was dug up in Pompeii, if I remember correctly. Here's actually a picture of the original one. So we have Sator, arepo, tenet, opera, rotas. But then if you read it in the other direction, it goes also Sator, arepo, tenet, opera, rotas. You can also read it down Sator, arepo, tenet, opera, rotas, and also up in the other direction. The fact that it's symmetrical and, well, works like a palindrome makes it special. And this particular magical square was picked by Samuel MacGregor Mathers to represent the cover of his version of the Book of Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. It's kind of interesting because this particular square doesn't appear in the more modern edition by Georg Den, which is based on a much more complete edition of the Book of Abramelin than this one was. This one was based on a rather flawed, incomplete French translation. But the first line being Sator, I suppose, confers to it some Saturnian properties and therefore appropriate for a ritual to acquire knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. So there we go, those are a few thoughts on magical squares and using them for talismans. So that's it for me for today. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video and to subscribe down below if you haven't already. There are also memberships available. If you click the join button, you'll be able to see more details about that. Speaking of memberships, I'd like to especially thank all of my Magister Venerabilis level 3 members whose very generous help is incredibly appreciated. Those members are Jason, Z. Daniel Barnett, SMQAI, Timothy Owens, Miles Ponce, The Jade Ghost, Rahul Nair, Mr. Gunwich, Arcantum by Mr. Friborg, Patrick, Charbon, FMA, Roluch Ashron, and Kyle Walker. Thank you ever so much, all of you, and everyone else, all the other members on the Discord channel as well. Do come and join us over there if you haven't already, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Take care of yourselves. See you soon. Bye-bye.